Good evening and welcome to a very special transfer show. Joining myself and Mark McAdam, a man who's a Premier League winner, a Serie A winner, a Europa League winner, an FA Cup winner and an EFL Cup winner. I think I've got them all there. Ashley Young, welcome along. Coming up, we'll get Ashley's view on Viktor Gyokeres and his standoff with Sporting over a potential move to Arsenal. We'll discuss the feud between Tottenham Hotspur and Nottingham Forest and where it leaves Morgan Gibbs-White. And they played together over 100 times for Manchester United. We'll get Ashley's take on Marcus Rashford and a defining summer for Ruben Amorim. Yeah, welcome along, Ashley. Mark, Ashley, thanks so much for giving us your time today. First of all, a very happy birthday for earlier on this week. How does 40 feel?
A little bit old, not going to lie. But no, it feels fine. I'm young. I'm going to be young always, so I'm still young.
It looks good. I love this as well.
This is nice, isn't it?
The Ashley Young history across the back wall there. Absolutely fantastic. Now, you're a free agent.
I am, yeah.
Having left Everton when your contract expired. What's next then?
To keep playing. I know I've turned 40, but it's not stopping me at all. So I'm looking forward to what's going to be next as well. But I'm not hanging up the boots anytime soon. I'm ready to go out there and play again. You
still got that hunger, that desire, that passion. You want to get out there and train every day, even in your 40s.
Yeah, of course. I've said for years now that I feel fitter than when I was probably about 25. So I've got a lot to owe that to Antonio Conte for his lovely running sessions that he put us through. But I'm delighted. I'm feeling fit, like I say. I've been training, and I don't feel like I'm ready to retire yet.
Right, this is a transfer show. No pressure.
Yeah.
Any exclusives? Any offers?
There's been some. There has been some. Nothing concrete yet, but there has been some that have arisen. So I'll just leave all that to my agent and just get myself fit and ready to when he gives me that call.
Yeah, I'll be giving him a call as well, I think. Just on the departure from Everton, Ashley, you started 19 Premier League games last season, featured in 32 of the 38 Premier League games last season. Was any part of you surprised that you actually weren't offered another deal at Everton?
I don't think I was surprised at the time. I've got to be realistic and know which way the direction of the club was going in, and obviously moving to the new stadium and whatnot, and obviously not getting any younger either. But when you're talking now, a lot of people are talking about stats, and playing 32 games at 39 years old was, it was incredible, to be honest. To be able to still be doing it and doing it well, not just playing, but playing at a high standard. So I was delighted with the season. I love my time at Everton. I love the place, the staff, the fans, everything to do with the club. I loved it. So I wouldn't say I was a little bit shocked, but I know that I've still got a lot to give. So either way, if the club had offered me a new deal or not, I would have been happy.
Well, you say you've got a lot to give. So do you feel you've still got plenty to offer in the Premier League, or are you looking potentially at a new challenge, a new country? There's all talk about Saudi Arabia and the MLS as well. Does any of that appeal to you?
Yeah, it does. Like I say, that I went to Italy, and that was magnificent at the time for me when I went there. So if something does come up with in a different country, then I'm definitely going to look at it. I'm going to be open to all options. If it's right for myself, my family, then I'll definitely look into it. I'll just wait to see what comes about from my agent. Is
your decision-making slightly changed now that you're 40 compared to earlier on in your career, when the family issues and the how important it is for your family to make the move is perhaps going higher up on your priority list than maybe it would have done before? Yeah, definitely. I think the moves to Aston Villa, I think the move to Manchester United, my kids at the time were young. Tyler was just
were just born when I moved to Aston Villa. So, you know, moving the kids about, moving the family about that time is different when they're younger. Now they're a lot older because I'm a lot older. It changes it, and you know, family has been massive for me all throughout my life and my career. But like I say, as you start to get older, you know, they're starting to do more and more things. So it's working out what's going to be best for family, and if it is having to uproot and move to a different country, then is everything going to be all right for them as well? So you know, a lot does come into it.
Let's get to the day's transfer news. We're going to start, Mark, with Arsenal's pursuit of Viktor Gyokeres. What is the latest in what's becoming a little bit of an unsavoury episode now?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't look good with regards to Viktor Gyokeres at the moment and what's going on. As far as Arsenal are concerned, they're very much relaxed about the current situation and their pursuit of the striker. There's been talks ongoing for some time, but as of yet not got to a complete, total agreement between Arsenal and Sporting Lisbon. And as we know from the way that Viktor Gyokeres has decided to handle this week, shall we say, he's facing some fines and possible disciplinary action from Sporting. The president has actually been speaking as well, Federico Varandas, and he's basically said, look, if the suitors don't want to pay what Viktor's fair market value is, we'll be very comfortable with that for the next 3 years, which is, of course, what's remaining on his current Sporting contract. As far as Arsenal are concerned, the situation between Viktor Gyokeres, the president and the club, has nothing to do with them. They're still operating to try and get a deal done. We understand that Sporting want £60.4 million with add-ons of 8.6 million. And we know that Viktor Gyokeres has said to everyone, I'm focused on Arsenal. I want Arsenal. Just before we came on air, there was a tweet from the Athletic's David Ornstein. He says Arsenal are in the process of completing a move for Viktor Gyokeres after taking final steps in negotiations with Sporting Lisbon. Arsenal made a formal advance on a deal over the weekend in a bid to secure the 27-year-old. His scoring record is absolutely phenomenal. It says as well that there's a 5-year contract on the table. So we're going to do our research and due diligence to check what the latest is there. But that was literally as we were coming on air. I guess the problem here is the player and what the Sporting president wants. And, of course, there was a lot of talk about this gentleman's agreement where he thought he could leave for one price. The president has said, hang on, no, you're not going for that cheap. It's got to be this price. We know that he signed a contract which had a €100 million release clause in, and Sporting are prepared to say, well, we know we're not going to get that, but we still want a fair whack for you. Have you ever been in this situation where you've got a release clause or a gentleman's agreement with an owner?
I wouldn't say a release clause, but definitely a gentleman's agreement with an owner, and that was when I was at Aston Villa with Randy Lerner. And he was a fantastic chairman, always over at training ground, always at the games, and you know, we got on really well. And I remember I got to the end of one of the seasons, and I always said that, you know, my ambition was to get the club into Europe. You know, I think 4 times in a row we finished 6th outside of the European places at the time, getting to Champions League. So he, you know, at the end of one of the seasons, I was ready to leave basically. Randy come on the phone, literally, I wouldn't say begging, but was saying to me if we could reach any agreement that I stayed that season, then he would allow me to leave and go to a club of my choice. You know, we flew in from America, we sat down, we talked, and you know, I was more than happy at Aston Villa. I was enjoying my time there. I loved my time there. Obviously, I'm an ambitious person and knew that I wanted to go and play, like, say, Champions League football, and you know, wanted to win trophies, wanted to win titles. So, you know, I stayed for that season, and I put everything into that season. It wasn't that, you know, I wasn't going to play because, you know, going out on the pitch, playing well, gives you more opportunities. So I made sure that I played that season. Literally at the end of the season, Randy rang me again and was literally like, I'm going to allow you to leave. So there was no release clause in there. As you see nowadays, there's so many release clauses in people's contracts. But that gentleman's agreement was agreed in the end.
And honoured.
And honoured, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's agreed and honoured. if you ask Viktor Gyokeres, he will probably say that it hasn't been
Yeah.
honoured, but he's decided to take the situation into his own hands and decided, I'm not going to turn up to training, effectively going on strike. Have you ever, I'm not saying that you have, I don't think you have, but have you ever seen a situation when you've been at a club where it's got so bad between a player and a club that they've just said, I'm not going to come and turn up anymore?
I've never seen anyone that's done that or been in that. And I think that, you know, it's a tough situation. Obviously, if there's been a gentleman's agreement that's been in place for him, then if that's not going to be honoured, then, you know, basically you're going to be stuck there because you've got a contract to fulfil. You've got 3 years left. It's going to be down to the sporting president. It's going to be down to the club to make that arrangement, that agreement. And if it's not going to be done, then, you know, I don't know whether it's going to be right that he goes on strike. Maybe he's going to do that to push for a deal. But, you know, if Sporting do stand firm, then you've either got a player that's not going to be happy, you've got a club that's then like, it's fine, the player's going to be here. Then the manager's then going to have to come into it, and he's going to have to make his decision as well. So it's a tough situation all round, I think.
Yeah, I think the direction of travel looks like it is going to be Viktor Gyokeres making his way from Sporting to Arsenal. A deal that looks closer is Noni Madueke from Chelsea to Arsenal. He's in London now, finalising that move. He's agreed personal terms on a 5-year deal in principle. He'll have a medical, all being well. A formal announcement is expected soon. A reminder of the fee: Arsenal will pay an initial £48.5 million plus £3.5 million in performance-related add-ons. But if you were to reach social media, which we spoke about before, you don't usually do that, Ashley, but there's been a little bit of pushback from Arsenal fans, supposed Arsenal fans, about this deal, about them not wanting Noni Madueke at Arsenal. How do you think Noni Madueke will be feeling about this? Will he have read it, or will he have detached himself from all sort of social media?
I think that, yeah, especially nowadays, social media is handy. It's always there to be able to be read and whatnot. And I think that, you know, obviously they're out of the Club World Cup, so that he's concentrating on that. That's where I think that his focus is going to be on. You know, if he does come across social media, and you know, it's not all Arsenal fans. I think it's a small minority that have, you know, come up with the, you know, saying that they don't want him at the club. And, you know, I think that can affect a player. You know, if he's seeing it, like I say, if he's reading it, then, you know, when he's seeing just that small minority, maybe he's thinking, oh, it's right, that I'm not bothered about that. But then on the other hand, he could be reading it and thinking, well, I don't want to go to a club where fans are not going to welcome me and I'm going to be accepted. So, you know, I think it's difficult. It's one of them where, you know, you've got to have the right mentality to deal with, you know, things that go on social media. And, you know, like we spoke, that, you know, social media, you can get a backlash from it non-stop. It can work in your favour. But I think the best thing to do is, you know, just not to look at the negativity that comes with it. Just stay positive. And, you know, the best thing for Noni to do is go and perform on the pitch, and that's all he can do. Yeah,
easier said than done. But if he was to perform on the pitch, do you think he could be a vital ingredient to help Arsenal go from being thereabouts to actually being there next season?
I think he can help him massively. You know, I think he would have looked at his Chelsea career and, you know, maybe thought that he could have done better. But, you know, he's done as well as he can do. Is there more to come from him? Yeah, I do think there is more to come. And, you know, when you go to a team of Arsenal that have, you know, finished second the last couple of seasons, they want to push further on and they want to win titles. So he's going to have that ambition, I'm sure, to want to win trophies. And, you know, it's competition for places. You're not going to go to a place and be like, right, I'm going to start. You know, you look at the likes of Bukayo Saka that's there, Martinelli's there, Trossard's there. There's even Wanyeras that's coming through now as well. As a player, if you've got that hunger and that desire to be able to have competition in a team, in a squad, then you'll be saying, I want to be playing week in, week out. So it's going to be healthy competition if he does make that move.
OK, let's go from Arsenal to Tottenham Hotspur. Mark, we thought the deal to take Morgan Gibbs-White from Nottingham Forest to Tottenham Hotspur was as good as done. Not quite.
Yeah, there's been a rather large spanner in the works of this situation. Yeah, so Spurs remain hopeful that they can still get a deal done and get Morgan Gibbs-White through the door We seem to be using the word unsavoury a lot on tonight's show, and it certainly feels like this is the situation. As we understand it, Morgan Gibbs-White has a release clause in his Nottingham Forest contract, which is £60 million, and Spurs believe they activated that release clause. Therefore, the agent said, right, they've activated the release clause, you can get down to London and go through the formalities of the medical. But Nottingham Forest are unhappy because they believe that release clause was a confidential release clause that no one should have known about. However, clearly, someone knew about it, and that's where Spurs could pitch in with the right figure to make sure it was triggered. At the moment, there's been no further developments, but I think the fact that our information is that Spurs are going to be hopeful that they can get the deal done would suggest that maybe this one will get sorted in time. However, there has been reports that Nottingham Forest are not happy and they're pursuing all of their legal options to try and work out their position. So I guess it goes back to the release clause.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation, I guess when you know you're on the verge of making that move to a new club and you're waiting for the agents to say, yes, you can get in the car, drive to Carrington, drive to Villa Park, drive to wherever you need to go, is there still that uncertainty until you get that confirmation you can actually go? You're still always a little bit nervous about where you lie.
I think that's the thing. As long as you get that confirmation and everything is agreed between the two clubs, you know, I can't speak of a release clause because I've never had one. So how that works, I'm not too sure. But you know, you think to yourself about Nottingham Forest. They've put that release clause in there. Is it written in the contract that they say nobody's to know? Well, the player knows that. His agent knows that. Surely you're thinking, right, we're going to put 60 million there, you're going to let people know about it. Or if you don't want him to leave, don't put it in there. Yeah. So it's one of them things that, you know, obviously Tottenham found out about the release clause and, you know, like you say, Morgan Gibbs-White has probably gone down to Tottenham and been told, well, they've activated your release clause. So he's going to be thinking, right, that's it, I'm going now. And obviously something's happened where Nottingham Forest are not happy about it. But like I said, if they weren't that happy and worrying about it, they wouldn't have put a release clause in there.
I guess, Domus, you understand this because you go through it every single transfer window. The bottom line is, Forest and Morgan Gibbs-White have signed a contract with a release clause. Now, it turns out it probably suits Morgan Gibbs-White a lot better than it does Forest. Viktor Gyokeres has allegedly signed a contract with a release clause of 100 million, and he was happy to sign that. And now that seems to suit Sporting and not the player. Ultimately, only sign a contract that you're comfortable with.
I think the release clause issue is an interesting one. We were discussing this last week, weren't we? Sometimes it's a case-by-case basis. I actually spoke to an agent about this and he said, you know, sometimes you can have a confidential release clause or you can have one where it can be made public. So the situation we've got here is that Tottenham Hotspur have gone in, probably, well, Forest think that they know what the release clause is, but it's a confidential release clause, and they've effectively gone in with a bid that matches that release clause, which is why Forest are saying, well, hold on, something doesn't seem right. Listen, time is catching us up at the moment. Ashley, fantastic stuff. Do not go anywhere, because coming up next, we'll focus on one of Ashley's former clubs. That's right, Manchester United. Yeah, welcome back to a very special edition of the Transfer Show. Mark McAdam and myself are joined by the one and only Ashley Young. Ashley, let's talk about Manchester United. You've seen it firsthand with Sir Alex Ferguson and post Sir Alex Ferguson. Did you detect anything that was going wrong when he left?
I don't think as soon as he left that there was that things were going to go the way that they have gone. I think it was going to be tough for any manager that come in after the boss, and it was David Moyes that come in at the time, and he lasted 10 months just because of the ways that he brought into Man United. Obviously the owners didn't see it fitting that we could carry on into another season. Maybe it's when he had the transfer window that he did buy as well as they thought he was going to do, and I just don't think that the club at that time was going to see the decline in the way it did so much after the boss had left.
Ruben Amorim obviously has come in now, and he's got the whole summer to try and reshape the squad and try and really put his philosophy into that team through pre-season. Do you see reasons to be optimistic now? Can you see the sort of start of something positive moving forward for United? I
think Ruben Amorim's got his way and his style of coaching, of his tactics, the way he wants to set up a team, and I think that we've seen he didn't want to come in at the time that he did. He wanted to be in at the start of the season, so it was going to be tough either way. When you come in halfway through a season, I'm sure any managers will say it's a tough ask, and when you're joining the biggest club in the world, where they were at, it was going to be even harder. So I think it's been said that you're going to have to give him time. He needs time, and he needs how many transfer windows, who knows? But you've got to set your mark up, put a stamp down as soon as you start this season. I don't think that anyone can give him any more excuses. It's now or never, really, to be honest. That he's got to have a good pre-season with a team, work out what his team is, what his best team is, what players fit into the system, unless he's going to change the system. But you can't see him changing the formation that he's been playing. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens after this pre-season.
Just briefly coming away from transfers for just one moment, I can tell you that Yannick Sinner is the new Wimbledon champion. He's just beaten Carlos Alcaraz by 3-1, 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, getting his revenge after that extraordinary French Open final 5 weeks ago. Yannick Sinner has won 2025 Wimbledon. Now, let's get back to Manchester United. Ashley, seems to be a change in approach with their transfer dealings. Matheus Cunha is in. Bryan Mbeumo, they remain optimistic of doing a deal for him. One source claims it could come this week, another bid to match what Brentford want. We think they want around £65 million. But both of these players have got significant Premier League experience, which has kind of been not the case, shall we say, in some of United's previous signings. They've been signing players from leagues with players that haven't had experience in the Premier League. Do you think they are learning lessons now with the approach that they're taking in this window?
I think they've got to be learning lessons after the last few windows that have gone on and haven't been the most successful windows. I think it's one of them where you need to bring in experienced players that know the league. Of course, you're going to bring in players that might not have played in the Premier League, and they could do extremely well for the club. But if you're going to go back to I go back to the boss, and at times most of his signings that would have had Premier League experience, he would have looked and thought, are they going to gel into the squad? And he went on a dossier to make sure he knew the players' families, friends, their eating, sleeping habits. They knew everything. He was, like I say, a genius. He just knew what players would fit into a squad that were hungry, that wanted to work hard, and had the desire to be a winner. And I think that was a massive, and that was a key to when the boss was signing players. So I think that it's a different approach from Manchester United, and I think that you've got to have a different approach to what's gone on in the past. And hopefully see a significant change in what's been going on.
Yes, Acuna in, Mbumo likely to join if United can match what Brentford want. But it's likely that Marcus Rashford doesn't have a future at Manchester United. Barcelona really pushing to get a deal done. They've explored the conditions of a potential deal for Marcus Rashford. Manchester United now expecting an approach from Barcelona. Rashford clearly wants to go there, but Barcelona might not be able to do anything but a loan, and that can't be ruled out, even though Manchester United would prefer a permanent move for Rashford. Look, you've played with him over 100 times at Manchester United. What's your overriding emotion if it is to be the end of Marcus Rashford at Old Trafford?
I think that you've got to look at the last, especially last season, with the way that things have been. Like I've loved him since the day that he trained with the first team. He's a fantastic player, but I think you can't always just stay at Manchester United. There's got to be something that's got to happen. There's got to be a change. For him last season, he went to Aston Villa, and I think that he enjoyed his time there. You saw him; he had a smile on his face again, and he looked like he was enjoying his football. So, I think now he's going to have options, whether it's options that he wants or not. There's going to be places where teams want to take him. So, I hope that this is going to be a right move that he takes, and it's just about his football that he goes and gets on with, and shows his football that he goes people that the Marcus Rashford that we know that because he, like I say, he's a fantastic player, and he showed that in glimpses, and when he showed that to Aston Villa last season.
There seems to be another player whose days at Old Trafford are coming towards. It's Jadon Sancho. He's got just 1 year left on his current contract with a club option of another year. The latest is that Juventus still very much interested in him and are currently working on a potential deal. The other player that they are looking at is Porto's Francisco Conceição as well. And it's not been ruled out potentially that Juventus would do both players. We know that he's in that group of five that don't really fit in at Manchester United now, and it's expected that probably 4 of the 5 players would potentially leave. When you look at the turnover of players, realistically, how many windows do you think it will be before Manchester United can be what they were when you joined, challenging and winning Premier League titles?
I'm not sure how many windows it's going to take. Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know how many windows. It could be this one. It could be another one next summer. Who knows how many it's going to take? The less the better, of course. Like I say, they've got 5 players there that are good players, fantastic players that would be in other teams, be able to be playing. But obviously, there's a reason why Ruben Amorim is not playing them. And I think for them now, I'm sure they're sat there or they're speaking to their agents and just saying, please, just get me to a place where it's a club where I go and play football. Like as players, you just want to play football. I don't think they're going to just sit around and just wait and wait and wait. They want to be going to play football. So, hopefully for the club and for themselves that they get something sorted so they go and play football.
Now, we started the show by talking about all the things you'd won, and it's quite an extensive list. You're the only Englishman to win the Premier League title and a Serie A title. Now, Scott McTominay has obviously made the move from Manchester United to Italy, won the Scudetto with Napoli. Are you surprised at how well he's taken to the country, to the league? You've played with him, you understand him, and he's always been top class, but never really probably held in the same esteem as other Manchester United midfielders, but really shining in Italy at the moment.
I think I'm extremely happy for him. He's one of them youngsters that come into the first team when we were there, and you could just see he's just got that hunger, that desire, that belief. He just wants to do well. He wanted to do well from a kid, and when I did see him leave, I was surprised that Manchester United actually did let him leave at that time. I don't think they had many midfielders at the time that were, playing as well as he was doing. And I always knew that if he had a new challenge, if he was going to go to a different country, that it'd be perfect for him. And when he went to, I saw him going to Napoli, and I saw Antonio Conte there. I just knew that the manager would love him. because he one of the hardest working players that I've seen and come across, and I am delighted for him that he's gone there and won the league. I wish it was Inter again, but you know that's where my love is for the club. But you know, like I say, I was surprised to see him leave at that time. But it's fantastic for him to go over there. And I said from my time of playing in Italy, you know, for players, if they get that opportunity to go and play abroad, then you know, definitely do it. Whether, you know, obviously I went when I was 34, I think, at the time, and you know, he's a lot younger than me. Whether you're younger, whether you're older, if you've got that opportunity to go and play and experience a different league, then definitely do it.
Brilliant stuff. Time is flying. Coming up next, more from Ashley Young, and we preview a defining night at the Women's Euros for England and Wales with former England international Sue Smith. Stay with us.